In today's video, I'm going to show you guys an accessory that's made for light trusses that you can use in your 1/2-inch EMT conduit builds. And this was shared by Dolphin Uppercut Avenger on Instagram. Huge shout out to them for sharing this with us. This is a cool piece of hardware that again is made for kind of DJing and lighting. But as always, we're on the lookout for different things you can use to solve problems within your projects. And this is pretty cool. It's on Amazon. You know, it's made in China thing, so it's classic Chinesium. Not the strongest thing. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to see if I can break one by hand because it feels like you'll be able to. So I'm going to test that. But first, I want to tell you guys about this specific solution. And basically, the way it's made to work is it fully opens up. And you can see that the nut locks in place on this side, and then you can use a 4mm hex wrench to fully remove the bolt if you want. And you can actually separate these two halves. And we were, playing around with the idea of making kind of a mounting solution. And I was really excited to test this out because I thought you'd be able to fully tighten that bolt and get this to lock and make a rigid, parallel pipe clamp, or do an angled brace that you could lock in place. But the way it's actually made, it's specifically made to articulate. It's not made to be locked in place. So that's kind of a downside to this, but still doesn't mean that you can't use it for doing some articulation. And I'll talk about a way that you can actually lock this in place towards the end of the video. But basically the way this works is you have that bolt that holds the two halves together, and then this clamp fully opens up and you can put in your 1/2-inch piece of EMT conduit, and then you swing that over, and then it has a wing nut and a washer. You want to make sure the washer is on the wing nut side and not stuck on the other side. And then you just hand tighten this as tight as you can until it locks in place. And then you have your 1/2-inch EMT conduit attached. And then of course you'll just do the same thing on the other side here to secure it to your other 1/2-inch piece of conduit. And then just fully tighten that wing nut again. And then you have your articulating arm. And like I said, it would be cool if you could lock this in place and create some X bracing or some different angles, but even the fact that it's able to articulate is pretty cool. You can see this being useful for all kinds of things. I think you could even make a hinge with this if you wanted to, but if you've got a certain panel that you want to rotate around, maybe if you're hunting and making a boat blind, I can see this being useful for making different panels. So there are some uses for the articulation point of it, but I think you could also kind of hack it and lock it in place. And what we did was we got some small washers and used a grinder to basically sand down the sides. It's on the opposite one here, to basically have this fit in here, because the way the bolt is designed is the shoulder kind of catches and is flush with the bottom of this, and it's made so it is able to swivel. But you can see here we kind of grinded down the side of the washer just to make this to where it tightens whenever you fully spin it around, and it'll kind of self-loosen if you twist the opposite direction. So of course it's not going to be the strongest thing once it's locked in place there, but you could get some rigidity out of it if you needed that in your project. But pretty cool, and like I said, it's made specifically for 1/2-inch EMT conduit, and well, not really 1/2-inch EMT conduit. It's made for tubing that's similar diameter to 1/2-inch EMT conduit, so it works great. And then again, you just lock these down in place here, and get your other 1/2-inch piece of conduit and lock that in place. And one of the downsides to this too, like I said, it is classic Chinesium, so it's not the strongest thing. You can tell just kind of how it feels. It's kind of flimsy and it's kind of expensive. It's 2 for $20, so keep that in mind as well. May not be worth it depending on what you're doing in your project, or it could be the only solution for whatever it is you're trying to do. But you can see here with that washer in place that it helps add some rigidity to it. And then of course you can keep going and kind of self-tighten it by hand, and it has some rigidity compared to this, as you can see there. So that's cool. And like I said, Chinesium, I think I could probably break this by hand. Maybe not. It's actually holding up better than I thought it would. Okay, so yeah, that's not too bad. I was expecting it to just like fully break in half. There it goes. And okay, so the washer and the nut is actually what broke. I was expecting the kind of lip of the flip over panel thing. I thought that was going to break off and kind of go through, but the nut actually is what broke there. So maybe you could replace the hardware and get some more strength out of this, but I did that by hand, and I'm not the strongest person in the world, so that kind of gives you some idea of the strength. But pretty cool. Like I said, 2 for $20. Huge shout out to Dolphin Uppercut Avenger for sharing this. I think it's a pretty cool thing that could be useful depending on what you're working on. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, leave a like and consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much.